Welcome back everyone. We're going to continue where we left off last time on the data pre-processing, working with missing data. Let's head back to that notebook. Okay, here we are back at the notebook. Let's go ahead and continue with the tasks. First, it's asking us to review the title column versus the purpose column and see if this is repeated information, which is kind of a strong hint that it probably is. But we'll go ahead and check this out. We'll say df purpose. Let's go ahead and just check out what that actually looks like. It looks like this is information on the purpose of the loan, whether it was for vacation, debt consolidation, and we can always check this out by saying feature info on purpose, run that, and it will be a category provided by the borrower themselves for the loan request. Okay, so we have that information, and we can also check out the same for title by saying title.head, run that, and here we can see vacation, debt consolidation, etc. And let's go ahead and check out the feature information for title. Run that, and this is the loan title provided by the borrower. So essentially we have both a category and a title. So the title column is simply a string or subcategory description of the purpose. So it makes sense to actually just drop the actual title column, because if we take a look at some of these examples on the title column, some of them are just basically the same information as what was on purpose. So we'll go ahead and drop that. We'll say df is equal to df.drop title along axes is equal to 1. Okay, so the next part here is probably one of the hardest parts of the project because it's filling in missing data based on the values of another column in the data frame. So I would highly recommend, again, refer to the solutions notebook if you're getting stuck on this one, which is why you're here, but let's go ahead and walk through this. The task is to find out what this mort underscore ACC feature represents. And if you run feat information on this, that is the feature information function on mort underscore ACC, run that and it reports back this is the number of mortgage accounts that people have. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a value counts of that by saying df mortgage accounts and say value underscore counts here. So we run that, and we'll realize here right now that it looks like the majority of people have 0 other mortgage accounts. And it looks like that's almost 25% of our data. And then it goes to 1, 2, etc. And some of these are kind of interesting extreme values. That someone here in this data set somehow has 34 mortgage accounts, but we'll go ahead and leave those in. Now the main thing we're actually trying to figure out here is what do we actually do with this column? If we take a look back at how many missing values we have in this column, almost 10% of all our values have something missing from this mortgage account number. So that means we cannot drop the rows, otherwise we'd be dropping 10% of our data. So now the other option is, do we drop the actual feature itself? Well, that one's up for debate. There really is no right answer here. It's not unreasonable to drop it, but you're also not missing that much of the data. You're only missing 10%. So what we want to figure out, is there a way we can fill in this data? So this is one of the hardest things to do with missing data, is to figure out a reasonable way to try to fill it in. So one approach is to try to figure out which of these other features that we have all the information for correlates highly with this mortgage accounts, and see if we can use that to fill in our information off of it. We'll scroll back down and basically follow the tasks which attempt to guide you along this. So again, many ways we could deal with this missing data. What we're going to do is we'll go ahead and review which columns are most highly correlated to our mortgage accounts column. So we want to check what is the correlation of the mortgage account column for all our current numerical columns. To do this, we simply say df, and then we'll go dot correlation, and then just check the correlation against the mortgage account column, and I will sort these values. So I run that and I get the results here. And of course, mortgage accounts perfectly correlates with mortgage accounts, but what's interesting is I have this very similar other column, total accounts. And it's not a perfect correlation, which means it's not duplicate data, but it does have pretty good positive correlation. So you should be able to see from this series that this total account feature correlates with the mortgage account feature. And that pretty much makes sense intuitively, that the total accounts would be correlated to the number of mortgage accounts. So let's go ahead and try this with a fill NA approach. So what we're going to do is we're going to group the data frame by total accounts and calculate the mean value for the mortgage accounts per total account entry. So get the result that looks like this below. So basically what we're doing here is the total account, we're going to group by it, and then figure out what is the mean value there of the mortgage account column per total account category. And then we'll be using this particular average to fill in the mortgage account column where we're missing in information. So it's a bit complicated right now, but let's break it down into steps. Right now, I have missing data in my mortgage account column, and what I want to do is figure out a reasonable way to fill it in based off this total account column. So what I will do is say, take my data frame, group by the total account column, and then take the average value for the total account column, or when I group by this. So I can see the average loan amount per number of total accounts, the average interest rate per total number of accounts here. So these are the averages across these different categories of total accounts. So then what I want is I'm really just interested in filling in my mortgage account information. So I'll grab that. And now I can see the average mortgage account value per total account grouping. So here I can see that the average mortgage accounts, if you only have 2 total accounts, is going to be 0. So it makes sense that if I have a row where I'm missing the mortgage account information, I will use this series as a lookup and replace that missing mortgage account value based off the total account value that I know is not missing and fill it in with the average value there. So this is not unreasonable. So what we'll go ahead and do is figure out how we can do this. So I'm going to set this equal to a variable that I can then reference. We'll say this is equal to total underscore account underscore averages or means is equal to this. So we run that. So we're going to fill in the missing account values here. There's actually a helpful link here on how to do this, but one way to do it is through a function call. So I'm going to build out a function that's going to be called fill in mortgage account. And it takes in 2 values. It takes in that person's total account value as well as that person's mortgage account value. And what I'm going to do is I'll do the following. If, and you can use np.isNan to check if we have a missing value. So if I'm missing a value, I'm going to return something. We'll just keep that commented for right now. However, the easier one is if I'm not missing any mortgage account value, I'll simply return the current mortgage account value. So what if I am missing this mortgage account value? What do I want to do? So what I want to do here is basically do a lookup call off the total account averages. Paste that in, and then look up what that person's number of total accounts in, and that will fill it in with this averaged mortgage account value off of this. Okay, so that's what this function is going to do. And then I can simply apply it. So I can say df apply, and I can do this either with a function call or for a lambda expression. So I'll do lambda to save a little bit of typing space, but basically this lambda, what we're going to do is call our fill mortgage account, and this is actually directly lifted off this helpful link. So if you check out that helpful link, the actual expression, if you scroll down, it's shown here for you. It's actually shown various ways, but here's the expression we're using. We'll come back here and fill it out as shown there. We'll say x of total accounts, and then x here of the mortgage accounts. And we're doing this along axis is equal to 1. And we're going to apply that, and then we'll set that equal to the mortgage account column. So this is, again, one of the probably hardest things we do throughout this lecture series on the solutions. So let me break it down one more time. You can go ahead and skip ahead if you understood what's happening here. But what we wanted to do is we needed to figure out a way to fill in the missing values of this mortgage account column. 10% of people were missing it, so we can't just drop those rows. And it looks like it may be important enough to actually keep in as a feature. So if we decide not to drop that column and not to drop that rows, we have to fill in the data. So how can we do that? Well, we figured out what actual other features are highly correlated with mortgage accounts. It looks like total accounts is pretty well correlated, so we'll go ahead and use that. And then what we're going to do is based off total accounts, we go ahead and group by total accounts and figure out what's the average mortgage account value for the different groupings of the total account for each total account category. And we're going to use that as our lookup. Then if we go through the data frame and we realize, hey, we're missing the mortgage account value, go ahead and look up the average value for that mortgage account based off their total account. Otherwise, if it's not missing, just return back the current value. And that is then applied here based off the information off this helpful link of how to apply a function that basically is a function of 2 columns in a pandas data frame. So that's what that Stack Overflow post is answering. So we'll go ahead and run this. And depending on your computer, this actually may take a little bit of time because it is doing calculations for every single row in the data set. But once you've done that, we should be able to confirm that it's been filled in by saying df is null sum, run that, and you should notice now that the mortgage account column is now at a 0, which leaves us with just 2 left on missing data, which is this revol util and public recorded bankruptcies. However, this is such a small percentage of our overall data set, at most 535, that we might as well just drop those rows. We don't need to drop these features. We can just drop these 500 and so people that were missing their public record bankruptcies and these 270 so people that were missing this particular feature. So to do that, we simply say df is equal to df drop na. And now if you run df is null sum, you should get back the result that you have no more missing data. Okay, so that's it for the missing data part of the pre-processing. Definitely one of the hardest parts of this project, and this is essentially what we just went through. Coming up next, we're going to see how to deal with categorical variables and dummy variables. Okay, thanks, and I'll see you there.